Oh, no.
Hello, how are we doing today?
Okay.
Welcome to episode 21 of the new network. I'm going to talk for about 30 seconds while Val finishes chewing her apple.
All right, we're good. I'm back. I'm back. I'm healthier than I was. Good. We're doing really good. Um, question.
Yeah,
I was filling my dog's bowl with water before we got on this call, and it hit me. I'm like, I can't believe that it's the middle of April.
right?
I really can't. It doesn't feel real.
Follow up question. What was the correlation between the dog water and April?
I don't know. I think maybe I was just present for a moment, and I was standing there, and I looked out the window, and I was like, oh, it's April break that we're on. Like, it is April. It is the middle of April.
It's like sunny enough and like warm enough out there that
That's what.
I can wear a t-shirt sometimes,
Yeah.
which is absolutely wild. My
Yes.
dogs are swimming,
Yeah.
which is
That's what it was.
crazy.
I looked outside and like the blue sky, the grass was looking green. I'm like, wow, it's April.
Yeah,
It's
this week was supposed to rain the entire week, but so far we've had nothing but like green skies.
green skies. Wow, I
Green
wish I
skies,
lived in
beautiful
Guelph.
green skies. Yeah, so I'm hoping that stays because I hate when it rains for extended period of times. Like, does your mood just like drop?
Yes. Depending on what I'm doing that day, like it depends on like just the day I think and what my plans are. Because sometimes I really like a rainy day, and sometimes I'm like, wow, let's call this day a nap day and turn it in.
That's
Every
fair. I think I like one rainy day every now and then. But when
yes,
it's like 4 or 5 rainy days in a row, like I miss the outside. I miss
yeah.
taking the dogs on walks and stuff like that. I'm really trying to stare into the camera and it's really throwing me off.
Is it difficult? I'm doing my best to do it as well. How am I doing?
I've been so focused on staring at the camera that I can't even tell if you're doing well.
We've just been making eye contact with technology, so that's comfortable.
Exactly, exactly.
Which leads well into our episode today. We want to talk about virtual networking and how do you connect now that there's not networking events and happy hours or whatever those would have looked like. Now you have to make eye contact with the camera. How does that
Right.
feel?
We've talked about it a lot in the past, but I'm excited to like get into the details and come up with some ideas on how we can better interact and connect with people because I don't know about you, but I'm still feeling like very disconnected from society. And there was a couple weeks there where we were kind of loosening our restrictions and stuff, and I got to see more people, and I was, out working and stuff like that, and it really revitalized me and like hit
Yes.
my what's that word, extrovert self. And
Yeah.
I was like, yes, let's do this. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like free and like less heavy.
It like
um
hones in on that like it anchors you again, but also makes
exactly, that's exactly it.
yeah.
Yes, but now
It's
that we're back into another lockdown, I'm feeling very disconnected and very like away from everyone. I know that's just a synonym for disconnected, but I'm
it's
going to say it anyways.
yeah, but it can feel really lonely, and it can also feel like really, um, like for me, I'm like, oh, like it's this routine again, and I'm like, how do I live this time without just existing? Like, what's that? There's a song out right now. It's like I'm trying to
Call
make
Me by Your Name by Lil Nas X.
make a life, not a living. That was the second one that I was gonna say. Oh yes, and it's trying to be like okay, and I made a post on Monday and it was about like you can't do it all, like, and you can't do it all well. So it's like the things now that like schooling's coming home and working and client stuff and just like self-care too, like it's
It's a lot to manage. It's a lot more to manage
yes.
than I think. Did you find, because you like we talked about a little bit before, but you had a little bit more experience with, in person networking per se and like getting out there because you started your career just a
Yes.
smidge before I did. Do you find that it's more work doing it online, or do you feel like, it's easier because
Ooh.
you get to stay at home?
See, I do enjoy meeting people online because the getting dressed part is very different, and the so like when I leave my house I try and I like to keep it looking organized when I leave it, and I'm sure people would be like, yeah, that's a lie, but in my head I do. So I don't have to do that. And I find it's easier, like, because a lot of networking events, like I used to run one and it would start at 7 or 6, it would go till 9, which is 9:30, which is 10 o'clock, you're home. So your whole evening's going to this. And sometimes you would get kind of, someone's telling their story, but it's more of like a complaining session than it is a connection session. So I find there's a lot of benefits to virtual networking, but with those benefits we do definitely like have the same negatives to the virtual networking, that it's not, you're not meeting in person, and it's tougher to pick up on someone's energy when you're virtual, and it's tougher to kind of break the ice, like getting to know them, where if I met you in the flesh, which I don't like that term, but if I met you in the flesh, I don't, in person, that, why did I
Yeah.
think of that? If I met you in person and you're wearing like an accent, a bright color or cool shoes, or you have your dogs with you, right? Like I'm able to pick things to spark conversation that you might be interested in too. But right now, like I can see, oh, like you have plants. So then I can be like, oh, like, are you a plant dad? Like, tell me more about that. But it's tough depending on like, and sometimes when you're networking with people, like it's like super close to their face, so you can't see a lot. And also like with Zoom calls and stuff like that, the interruption, like where do you jump in, where do you jump out, or like who's going to answer that question? I went off on a rant there, but
No, it was good. I loved it. There's
yeah.
a couple of points that I was mentally noting. The energy thing, I think it's something that is affecting most of us, and I don't think we kind of realize it as much. Because I like for our relationship, I'll use us as an example. We'll get real here. We see each other like at least once a week
Yeah.
when we do our podcast, and we text, like we're almost always texting. Both of us reply
Okay.
like 3 days or so later, but like we're always in a conversation. But I definitely still don't feel as connected to you, or as
Yes.
like our friendship isn't as close as it would be if we were seeing each other every
Yes.
week like we used to.
In
um,
person.
exactly. And I find that even with like family members or people that I
Mhm.
consider to be my very close circle, that I still talk to regularly and
Yeah.
FaceTime, or whatever, see every once in a while. um, there's still definitely that big barrier there that is caused by the online world that we live in right now. And I think it's just very interesting to think about as we move into a predominantly online society, which is where I think we're heading.
Yes, and it's also easier to, when you are like virtual or physically distanced, to keep things surface. Like it's easier to not, like say you're having a bad day. Usually when you meet some, like you see a friend that's having a bad day, you pick up on that. Maybe it's their tone of voice, maybe it's their body language, maybe it's like the way that they show up, the way that they look, and you're like, oh, like what's going on? But if it's over text, it's like they're like, no, just going to work or just got supper ready. Then you're like, okay, like usually you feel it though, but it's harder to pry when you're uncertain of there being something more. Like it's harder to be like, are you sure? Versus it in person, you can call out and kind of be like, yo, you don't look so hot, like what's going on? Or like, do you?
100%, like body language, everything. Like when you're with someone and they're not doing well or doing okay, you could 100% tell, especially if you have a strong relationship with the person. But yeah,
Yes.
like you said, online texting, it's so easy to hide behind your words. And even like on Zoom calls, it's so easy because right now you can see this little frame here. You can see my
Right.
face and my one plant. That's all you can see. Like I could be you know wearing pajamas and just rolled out of bed, haven't brushed my teeth, my hair could be a mess, like I could be a literal mess right now, but I
Right.
presented myself halfway decent, um, for the world.
Right. So I think that's where there are some pros, but there are some dangerous cons in that sense too, where humans are like, I'm sure, I think it's a biblical term. I've seen it on the Facebook where it's like humans are meant to gather. And I do believe that. Like, I do believe in community, and I do believe we're not meant to be, like, if you look at like a heat map and you saw like all these little red dots spread out in their houses, like, that's not how it's meant to be. We are supposed to be meeting at, I don't know, like the community center, like meeting at,
The
like we
park,
have dance.
public places, yeah.
Yes, like we are supposed to be coming together. I do believe that there's a virus. I do believe the virus is killing us. I do believe we don't have the best system in place right now to prevent that. But I hope and I think and I pray that one day we will be able to gather in person again, because that's where like truly the energies are the most powerful. Like we're all coming together, and it's like meeting people and like just good things.
Yes, agreed. And I like what you said too about like gathering, because I think
Mhm.
people one on one act differently than they would if they were in a group. For example, like you and I, like just the two of us, act very differently as opposed to us being like with our entire friend group. And you know,
Yeah, that's so true.
right? Like that just clicked to me. I've
Yeah,
never thought about that before
yeah.
until this moment.
But I
Um,
used to also feel fake when I did that. Like I used to feel like I was being two different people and it like wasn't right. But I think what I've learned is that it's just a different version of myself. And I'm that different version because when I'm in a group of people, I'm able to feed off of more energies. But when it's just me and another person, I'm like, okay, we're tuning into each other. But like I'm trying to picture it like two light bulbs side by side versus like a string of lights. What's brighter, right? But there's not like there's still energy and connection, but it's like when there's that string of lights and you're in a group of people that you connect with and vibe with, then it's you're different. You glow different.
100%. I used to think that I was, you know, putting on a personality or fake, like you said, when I was in a group, because I know that, you know, different people bring out different sides of me.
Hmm.
But I think that's just exactly what it is. Different people bring out different sides of you. And when you have, you know, that group of people that all bring out different sides of you, your personality is meshing,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
you're bringing out different aspects
Yeah.
of
Even like
yourself.
if like I think of a day. And it also depends on the day. Like, see, if I see that same the group of people that light me up every Friday, I'm even then I'm a different person every Friday. Even if you put me in the same situation with the same people, I still show up different. Like I think of nights when I see my sisters, and some nights I'm like pretty, reserved and I'm like listening and those things, and the other nights we're like electric and we're just like going off and laughing and talking about childhood stories or whatever it may be. But like it's the same people, it's just the different energies, the different someone had a long work week or someone had like a just different times, and but we're all still coming together. But I think that's so cool, and it's so cool to observe yourself in those different situations.
Do you ever, we're getting a little sidetracked, but I like it. Do you ever feel bad when you like you said, when you're with your sister, sometimes you're reserved and like a little quieter, as opposed to like, you know, like I've seen the four of you get together and sometimes you guys are all like on crack, basically. Like I love it. Like, do you ever feel, I don't want to say bad, but like, yeah, do you ever feel bad when you don't show up as that cracked out version of yourself that you want to be with your sisters?
Yes, 100%. And I feel bad when I do that with clients. Like I feel bad when I do that with my home life, like my family. I feel, yeah, totally. There's a guilt that lays on me that I'm like, I didn't show up how I wanted to be, but I totally like I couldn't. Like I just couldn't. So is it better to show up half, or is it better like, and I think those are the nights when I look back and I'm like, "Oh, I probably should have said no to that." Like I should have maybe not to always be showing up at my fullest, but because I'm like, oh, I think that night I probably just needed to recharge. Like I just needed to be alone.
Right. But also, there's also on the flip side of the things, like your family or whoever, whatever group it is, would, in a sense, rather you be there and not be as excited or full of yourself as
Yes.
opposed to not being there. So it's that tricky, do I go? Do I?
Right. But then I think that's part of like that tuning in and being in connection with yourself. It's like, what is that true answer? And you know what's right. Because like once you get into the vehicle, you're like, like don't you feel that resistance when you go certain places? You're like, I wish I wasn't going. It's like then pull back in and say, I'm not up for it. But
Right.
we
And then
have
the whole time,
yeah.
yeah. And like the whole time you're there, you're just thinking, okay, how am I getting out of this? How am I going home? And then
Yes.
I start to feel bad. I'm like, okay, well, I should be enjoying myself and I want to, yeah, exactly. I should want to be here, but all I'm thinking about is leaving. And I know everyone's not mad at me, but like,
You can
what's
pick
the,
up when someone's not as into something, right?
exactly.
Like you can pick up but yeah, so then like to me I'm like what is the most, and I'm trying to do this more. It's like what is the where can I spend my time and energy that has the highest quality? And if that night if I go to a campfire with my sisters but I know I'm not gonna, that's not what I want to do because I'm just like I'm just empty, I just need time for me, then what serves like the highest quality? Well, I would rather stay home, take care of me, and then if they do it next week, then I'll probably be more likely to be like ready for it then. Make
Right.
sense?
And it's not only like if you were to force yourself to go, it's not only a disservice to yourself because, what little social energy you have left in you, you've then spent at that campfire. And then the next morning you have a client meeting and it's now moved on to there. You don't want to be at that client meeting and you're now doing a disservice to that client. So it's important, to keep in
Yeah.
mind.
I totally see where that burnout happens, and it's so easy to do. You just say yes to so much that you want to say no to. But the other thing, and I heard it this week, it's like if you don't fill your schedule, meaning block off time for the things that you like and that you are vitals in your business and that bring you joy and that are important to you, your schedule will be filled by others with things that are not important to you, which is so true. So true.
It's
Especially, I
so
think
true.
being self-employed, there's people that think that maybe we're available all the time to do stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't had a lot of interactions with that lately, but I think when I first started, there was a lot of like, oh, can you do this? And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I
no.
definitely struggle with saying no, or like I'll have, my networking time planned out or my education time planned out, and then someone asks me to do something and I'm like, yeah, I don't need to do that at that exact time, so I'll do this instead.
But
And
you're
then
also like, I should be educating myself, and that's what I have that time for. And there's times when like you're like, yes, I definitely want to do that over this. But there's times where you're like, you disrespect yourself by extending your boundaries for someone else.
right, right. And back to networking, and we've talked about like being in a group. It's so, like you said, it's so hard networking in a group right now, because even if we do like these big Zoom calls where we get everyone together, like you said, it's so awkward to be like, oh yeah, okay, I want to answer that question, let me butt in. Like it's 100%
Yeah.
not.
You almost do like you do it how like the kids are doing at school. You like raise your virtual hand and like, but you definitely need a facilitator. I think more than ever, and that's what I found. Like I started you could call it networking. I just called it like, what did I say? Community over competition. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's a group of female financial advisors, and female for no other reason than the fact that like the industry is like a very masculine dominated process and sales. So I just wanted to connect with the I don't know. I've connected with other
It's something
females.
you guys have in common.
Right. So um, to see how they were advising and to see how they were, approaching things and how they felt in the industry. So I started it. We've only done 2 meetings. There's been 5 each time, which I think there's only 10 in the group, maybe. So it's every other Friday, anyways. And they show up, and it's cool because like the last meeting there was an advisor, and she brought questions, so she put them out, and like we were able to answer them. People like if there's a new technology rollout, then we talk about it, or a new rule or a challenging case. Like it's been really great, but it's definitely tough because someone talks, but then they don't hear the person down here talking in time, and then they tell their story, and then there is a lot of like I find myself, because I'm the organizer of it, then I'll be like, oh, and what was that you were saying? Like you want to make sure you kind of bring everyone into it without feeling like you're talking over them.
And an important thing, I think, when you're doing group networking and you're in a group too, is to have those little one-on-one conversations with people. Like, everyone's talking about a group thing, but then, you connect with one person who has a very specific, similar thing in mind, and you guys are suddenly having that one-on-one in the group, but you can't do that over Zoom.
Right.
Like if we had 4 people in here, like you and I couldn't have a private conversation and the other 2 people couldn't have a private conversation. So it's harder to connect with people on a deeper level, I think. For me, especially because I started, real estate in the pandemic, and my brokerage has a weekly staff meeting where we just get on Zoom, like whoever can make it gets on Zoom, and we talk about upcoming listings and things like that, just general stuff. And that's like the only way we all interact. Like we see each other in the office, but we're staying 6 feet apart. We have masks covering our face. So that's like our only time to like be social. But it's like I feel like I haven't really connected with many people from my brokerage because
it's hard to. And I was just like in my head it was going off there. I'm like, yeah, like what if there was a call every Thursday morning for an hour and it was all the advisors out of the Tri-Cities, but I don't even know what that number looks like. Say it's 50 advisors. How do you even begin to like, unless it's training where everyone is guided towards one slideshow, one speaker, then okay. But it's tough to just say, let's have a conversation when you can't. It'd be cool. There's gotta be some sort of app out there that, or someone's inventing something where you can like pick someone off the screen and be like, you two go here for 5 minutes and you go here. Like, I know that you can do breakout groups and Zoom and stuff, but I don't know. I'm
Yeah, it'd
just
be nice if there was like a whisper feature or something. Because I know I don't know why I did that.
like
Some apps, and I'm thinking about like honestly Call of Duty, but like there's a there's a option where you can like whisper and it just goes to them. It's called a whisper. I think
yes,
it's Call of Duty or something like that, where you can like have those one-on-one conversations.
yeah,
And it'd be nice for someone to invent that, but I also like want to get to a point where we don't need that, because I want to like normally these staff meetings, not COVID, are held in person at the office every Tuesday
right.
night. So you're forced to get to know people. You're forced to talk to people. It's just a different experience.
Yeah, and I think like even today I went and picked up baby chicks from a person off of Facebook, and I got a brief flash of anxiety as I was pulling into her driveway because it was a new person that I had met online, right? Like it was just this kind of like I was like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "You're literally and it's an exchange." But I'm like, what if she wants to talk? What are we going to talk about? And she didn't. We talked about dogs and chickens and April break, but it was interesting because I get that when I go to meet new clients, or even if I'm just meeting them in their homes, but I don't get it as much on Zoom.
Yeah. Very similar story. I have a client who I'm showing a house to whenever it hits them. Thank you. I was like, what is that? Whenever it hits it's a coming soon. So whenever it hits the market, we're going to see it as soon as it hits. But we've never met in person, but like we have been emailing and phone calling for months, like since probably October. But I'm still like a little nervous. Like I know this person quite well. Like
Yeah,
we talk like several times a week, or like email back and forth, just or text or whatever. But I'm still like, what are we going to talk about? Like if we're
yeah,
going to see a house, we're obviously going to talk about the house, but like, am I going to be good with small chat, like, or small talk and stuff like
right.
that?
Yes, and I think that's like part of that. Like you're also painting their vision, like and casting their dreams and trying to get more out of them. And we're doing the same, just in different areas, right? Like I'm like, what does retirement look like? And you're like, can you see yourself cooking in this kitchen? Like it's same, different, different, same, but trying to build that relationship again on a different media in a different platform, right? It's like when you would I don't know what's a good like say you had a friend that you only knew from playing soccer or from Call of Duty. You knew this person, but then you ran into them at the grocery store and you're like or at a bar and you're like, it's a different platform, right?
Right. It's like coworkers for me.
Yes,
Um,
that's okay, that's the one that
yeah,
I
like you can be so close to coworkers, they can know every single thing about you at work, but the second you guys hang out outside of work or you run into each other or whatever it is, it's such a different experience.
yes.
Cineplex, for example, I remember like Cineplex people were very close when we worked there and we hung out every weekend. But whenever someone else showed up and like didn't work at Cineplex, it was weird because all we talked about was Cineplex, even outside of work.
Right.
And
So
like
then
that
there's this
person.
person that has a different topic or doesn't have a relation to that topic. And it's like, ooh, how do we fit you in here?
Exactly. And like you can talk to people so much easier at work, and then the second you show up to their house or show up to the party, you kind of got to wait a little bit until everyone's had a couple beers in them or a couple drinks, and
Yes.
then things start flowing. But it's like at work, like the second you see them, you're immediately talking your best friends. It's just
It's
it's
like I would imagine I don't like not my funeral, but I've joked with that about a client. He's like, it'll be so funny to see who shows up to my funeral because he just has friends like biker friends and um like oh what's the word, oh my gosh, they wear a ring, engineer like friends, like all of these different pools of people that you would never really pull together. He goes, but at my funeral they'll all have to be there. And I'm like, huh. Or like something like a wedding where you have your friends that are like your coworkers, and then there's your cousins, and then there's your like you're truly bringing together this mash of people. I love weddings, not
yeah.
my own, but I love that for that because you're like
You
these
don't love your own wedding?
dynamics. Yeah.
It's like, do you remember when it was like my 19th or 20th birthday, and I invited all of my hometown friends, all of my work friends, and all of my school friends to the
Yes.
same house. And my hometown friends stayed in the basement, my work friends stayed on the main floor, and then the other friends stayed on the top floor. And it was so exhausting because I had to run through the house up and down the stairs trying to like mingle with each group.
Literally we're like doing laps, but I think that's also, I look back and I'm like, I would have been way more like, I would have tried harder. I wouldn't have been like, oh, it's, I get to go see this circle of friends. Like we should have had some icebreakers, like we should have, right, like prepared
Yeah,
that social situation, and or like as myself, like just like gone up and been like, hey,
you
what do you,
got there's got to be like a leader or something, someone, because as soon as someone would have been like, hey, let's just go talk to this other group,
yeah,
everyone would have been like, boom, best friends.
yeah,
Like,
or like started a game, like if it's beer pong at that point, like, okay, you guys versus us, and then like you're just having small talk and conversation. And but yeah, when there's those social divides and no one takes the leadership role or the facilitator role, and
it's
yeah,
also going to be very interesting if and when we do go back to a regular society where everything's done online, because those people who would regularly take, I'm getting comfy here, would regularly take that leadership role or take that, like the use, like I think that you're one of those people these days. You're kind of out of practice, or is that a weird way to describe it, but out of practice. So like
well,
I
it'll just be like a whole new world. Like, how do you
yeah,
approach it? How do you bring people together now?
right. And I feel like we're all going to be different people, and it's just going to be, I feel like the
Oh
first
yeah,
time everyone hangs out with like all their friends again, it's going to be like awkward, like getting to know each other, which is exciting and fun, but it's also going to be awkward and weird. And
it'll be like, yeah, it'll be like young love and like first dates where you're like nervous, but it's exciting, and then there's gonna be some awkward stuff, and it's just like humans like in their habitat again.
it's the little psychology person in me is going to be like sitting there staring at everyone, seeing how everyone interacts. Like it's going to be exciting. I literally have dreams about like our friend group getting back together and just like drinking or like playing games or whatever. And I'm just so excited for it.
Ugh, one day, but that's, and to bring it back to like the networking, like it is, it's just, it's different, but I think like you said, you're like, I don't want to have to I don't want to continue this, like I don't want it to have to get to the point where there is those whisper features. But even if COVID goes another 12 months, another 24 months, even if it goes for another 4 months, it's worth like trying it, right? Like, because this is our now, like we have to dive into it now. And if we surface and it's a different world, then like that's perfect. Like we'll have what we desired, which was in-person meetings. But it's like, it's doing your best with what we have.
Right. And I think one thing that I personally need to take advantage of more, and I think a lot of us do, is that everyone has so much time on their hands right now. So
Mhm.
why not reach out? Why not fumble through that awkward FaceTime call, or why not fumble through that awkward like group
Yeah,
Zoom? Like, what do you have to lose?
yeah, yeah, and exactly, that's just it. It's like I had like a vision of like a house. What's that one app called? House Party. Like doing one of those, because I'm
Yeah.
like that would be cool, and it's something that, like, yeah, we have the time and we have the resources. It's, and we need to be pushed out of those comfort zones. We need to still be in practice with getting uncomfortable as heck, because that is what
Exactly.
happens, is we're going to get too comfortable with this, and then I'll be like, oh, I
Yeah,
don't
I
want to
find
go.
myself like I've definitely had friends, like my theater group friends have tried it a couple times, and then every time we do it, it's like fun. It's awkward and weird and not fun, but it's fun
Yeah,
because we drink and we play games and stuff. But um, now every time like we try and schedule it, we're like, I don't really want to. Like I want to lay in bed and watch Netflix and do nothing.
right. You're like, well, this is more comfortable, this is more routine. Nah, I'm not going to try something different. But that's where we need to keep being uncomfortable. And I'm preaching to the choir. We need to just be uncomfortable. Or when the opportunity does come and you get an invite to a party, the wall that is going to hit you because you have just been comfortable. And now you
Right.
have to pick an outfit, head to toe.
You have to mentally prepare yourself. That's such an interesting point, because I talk about how excited I am for these social gatherings and like getting out. But when I get the opportunity to do a virtual social gathering, I my immediate thought is nah. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens when, we can. Am I gonna actually want to, or am I just saying it because I can't do it right now?
Right. Is it like on the top shelf and you're like, oh darn, I wish I had that, but then it's on the bottom shelf and you're like, I don't really want it. I don't really want it.
Yeah. I want COVID to be over, for the obvious reasons,
Mhm.
people's health, people's work, everything like that. But I'm also very excited to see the social point of view of what happens when we go back and how society has changed.
Yes. And there are also some benefits. Like I will keep not the majority, but quite a few of my meetings online. Like maybe I don't know how I'll work it out. Like when we, finish a mortgage, or when I'm giving you your retirement plan, like that's when I come to you in person. But I do enjoy that aspect. Like, I just have that
Exactly.
weird.
Like the initial meeting, I think is perfect to do, on Zoom, because it's a step up from that phone call where you're not seeing each other,
Yes,
but it's a step
yes,
down from meeting in person. And I think it's that great happy medium.
yeah.
But still, I still think it's important to, see someone in person to really connect with them. Um,
Agreed. Agreed. Yes, like I'm going to see clients on Thursday in Woodstock, and which I'm pretty sure is legal. Pretty sure.
you're an
And
essential service. You're good.
yes, yes, and we've been meeting over Zoom, and I love them. They're my ideal clients. They're fantastic, and I'm excited for it. Like I'm really excited to meet them. But yeah, it's to like finish some final paperwork. I'm like, I don't want you printing 14 pages. I'll bring the paperwork to you. Yeah. So those meetings, it makes sense. But for every single meeting we've had, because sometimes I just have a meeting and I'm like, I just want to review your budget again really quick. And we review it, and then it's like, yep, okay, perfect.
Right. Like a 2 hour long meeting where you have to drive, you have to get ready, you have to do all this,
Right.
turns into like a quick 10-minute, hey, I'm just going to hop on.
Yes.
So I
Yes,
think
100%.
that'll
So,
be an improvement in society.
mhm.
Which
Yeah,
which
and I
I'm
think
excited.
what we'll see too is people, like what I hope it gives us is very like high level, and I don't know if you'd call this, there's probably a name for it, but we look at Toronto and it's compiled of people and the pollution, and there's people don't have space and they don't have a grasp on where our food comes from, and this is just getting like really into it. But hopefully it gives the ability for people to take space, like little tiny homes, or you know whatever, you turn a few farms here and there into little communities. Like there's homes, and people are able to move away from these city centers that literally, the city is great for its reasons, but I
Yep.
think that space helps people. Like I feel
Couldn't agree more.
that's, yes, like I feel like green space and nature, even if you just bring it down to nature, being closer to nature in its like its truest form, not just like a green space that was put in this like planned in the city center, but a farmer's field, like cows and horses and Mennonites and buggies, or like to take the space that not only they physically need to be closer to nature, but also just like that their souls need. Because like I can't imagine, like say living in like a condo building where you can hear your neighbors all around you, and you like I like taking my dog outside my house robe, and I want people to feel it's freedom.
It's a different feeling when you have space and you're alone and you're, experiencing nature, and it's just, it's something that if you've never experienced, you can't describe it.
Right, it's totally like euphoric and peaceful, and I think that, because bringing it back, I hope that we don't go back to where people need to be in a cubicle from 9 to 5 and corporate and clock in, clock out. I hope that there can be a world where people can work from their desk on their lunch. They go out, they feed their chickens that they've like just those things that people can appreciate, and they don't need a vacation. They don't need to go south for 2 weeks of the year to just de-stress and get drunk and forget it all. They actually just like they don't even want to stop working. Like, okay, maybe not that, but
I know what
maybe
you're saying.
like you know what I mean. They're like, okay, I'm gonna take a long weekend and go camping, but they don't need to disengage because their cup is consistently full.
Right. And I think we'll get into this a little deeper. We have that working from home episode coming up that we're going to talk about.
Yes,
And I think
yeah, that
that's
would
a
suit me in perfect.
great conversation to have for that episode. But I like what you said. And I think that this pandemic has shown us and shown companies how people can work from home, and people can be effective
And they're so much
working
more
in their own
productive.
space. Exactly.
Like,
And they don't hate their job. Like, it's people are enjoying the time with their family, with, themselves, with nature, with everything like that. I would love society to stay like that. And I think,
oh yeah, we need to do like an episode where like we just put the positive on the pandemic. Like we pull all the positives that we can.
yep, love it. Writing that down right now.
Are you?
All right. I love that conversation. That was good.
That was really good. That felt really good. So that was episode 20? 21.
21.
Wow. Can you imagine that we were once 21, but it still feels like we should be 21, but we're not 21 anymore?
Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I am 21. No, I'm not.
No, it's so
I wish.
crazy. Mm. Yes. Okay, that was fantastic. I really love that conversation about networking, how it's changing online, virtual. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, like try reaching out to someone that you maybe haven't reached out to. Or when you see someone that you're like, oh, I like what they're doing, reach out to them. Or even if you're just commenting on them and like giving that energy, then do that. Like you don't have to be like, hey, I want to get coffee over Zoom. Just be like, hey, I like your brand, I like your style. Like that's you're doing great.
Right. It
Spread the
can
love.
be like tiring to like, reach out to someone and have a conversation with them. But yeah, like you said, the littlest thing, like commenting on someone's post that you like, or whatever it is, or sending them a quick message like, hey, you're doing amazing. What do you have to lose there?
That's just it. Just keep giving. Because I think that type of giving truly like for me when I'm like I like gave some love like that feels good for me like that.
Me too.
Like
I
I
love
don't
it. We're like that.
intend to receive, but I give and it feels good.
Right. Also, on another note, I think that we should change the podcast name to That's Just It, because I think we both say that like at least 10 times an episode.
No,
I,
do we?
I don't know if you've noticed it, but just this week, I've noticed we both said it like a lot.
That's just it.
That's
That's
just it.
just it. Yeah, I think we should.
I like it. Alrighty, we're gonna wrap this up, and we will be back next week with another episode. Thank you guys for listening, as always, and yeah, get some time for yourself, do some networking, reach out to someone this week.
That's just it.
That's just it. Bye, guys.
Bye.